Hi, this is Charles Butler, host of The Reality Check with Charles Butler. And I have a radio show that you can check out at Genesis Communication Network, GCNlive.com, and RedStateTalkRadio.com. Look, folks, Auntie Maxine, as she's now known to millennials, had the nerve yesterday, tax day, to stand up and say that she did not trust President Trump. She did not trust him because he's shown his colors and he's not going to change. Well, we don't want him to change. I've supported Donald Trump since June of 2015. I said that Donald Trump would win the GOP nomination and win the general election. I called it then. And the reason I called it is because the American people were tired of the Washington song and dance. We're tired of Paul Ryan, who is GOP light. So the reason Obamacare wasn't repealed and replaced was because Paul Ryan didn't want it repealed and replaced. Remember, Paul Ryan did not support President Trump as the candidate. He said, I'm going to vote for him, but I don't support him. I didn't say that. The Speaker of the House said that, a Republican. How crazy is that? GOP light. I'd like to see Paul Ryan replaced. He's a nice guy, but he's no Jack Kemp, and he thinks he is. That's his problem. Getting back to Auntie Maxine. Auntie Maxine never told that President Obama would not meet with the Congressional Black Caucus. February 2nd, 2009, you can look it up on the whitehouse.gov site under press briefings. April Ryan confronted Robert Gibbs about the president not meeting with the Congressional Black Caucus, and they had numerous requests. Now, let me take you back and remind you that after President Obama was inaugurated, the first people he met with were the health care insurance executives, and every last one of them got filthy rich. Their stock went up at least 128%. That's the lowest. The others were all over that. So they bailed out filthy rich. The second group of people he met with were the lobbyists for the pharmaceutical companies, pharma. Then he met with the gays, and he met with everyone but the Congressional Black Caucus, who were representing who? Black Americans. I told you, like Jesse Jackson told you, that Barack Obama does not care anything about black people, and I think he's shown that, and his colors were proven over his 8 years. Not only his 8 years in office as president, but his 12 years in Springfield and his 4 years in the Senate. There's nothing that this man has done for black people. In fact, he wouldn't even support an HBCU, he wouldn't put his name on a HBCU bill that was that they asked him to sponsor out of the White House. Just all they had to do is put his name on it. He said, well, I don't do that stuff. He tried to close the HBCUs. I'm the one who broke the story about Barack Obama taking $85 million from historically black schools and colleges and giving it to Hispanic majority schools. Now, Roland Martin picked up on it at WVON because the callers called and told him about it because they were listening to me. And then Al Sharpton picked up on it because the callers called him at WVON and they picked up on it. And Tom Joyner eventually called the president out on it. And the president lied, said he was going to put all this money in HBCUs. Never happened. Just paper. Same way with Maxine Waters. She didn't call out President Obama. She needs to leave Trump alone. Tell me she's going to impeach Trump. I don't even think she knows the grounds of impeachment. At the end of the day, this is more voodoo intellect. And that's the problem that we run into when we're dealing with black leaders, quote unquote, because none of them have been elected. But Maxine was elected from her district. And by the way, just let me give you an aside about Maxine's district. Maxine's district is a war zone. Black people are being killed by Latinos in her district. There's a wholesale war going on. If you don't believe me, all I say is pick up an LA Times or Google LA Times and read the paper. There are numerous stories. Or read the LA Sentinel. That's a better paper because that's the black paper. And they will talk about the war, the undeclared war between blacks and Latinos in LA. But it's not blacks who are fighting Latinos. It's these Latinos coming, talking about they're taking back their country, they're taking back their territory. And then you have these black idiots sitting in City Hall, in the state legislatures, in Congress, talking about people of color. Well, the only people of color that we should be concerned about are black people, because at the end of the day, we are the only ones who had laws written against us. The Constitution purposely excluded us, black folks, not African Americans, black Americans who were citizens, from pursuing the American dream. And that's what I think we should focus on. We should focus on the fact that we are Americans and we need to be treated as Americans, not second-class citizens, not as black Americans, not as African Americans, but as Americans. And we should demand that we be treated as Americans. Now, let me say this. We have a long way to go in terms of rectifying the damage that's been done over the last 40 years with this attack and this assault on our people. We measure ourselves by the lowest denominator in the race. Why is it when we talk about black folks, we're always talking about people in poverty and ignorant people? The civil rights movement, if I want to remind you, the civil rights movement, folks, was not about poor people. The civil rights movement was about black people moving up from the working class and the middle class and being able to, like the Public Accommodations Act. It was about people who had money to go and stay in a hotel or had money to travel. I remember when we would go down south, we didn't stop and stay in a hotel. We didn't even stop at restaurants in the 60s when we used to go south. And why? In the 50s and 60s, especially when you went south. Why? Because white folks would spit in your food or you wouldn't be served, you'd go to the back. We didn't deal with those humiliations. We just put some chicken in the car, and black folks, you know what I'm talking about. Put some chicken in the car and some pop and some water in a cooler. We used to have a Coleman cooler. I'll never forget, a green Coleman cooler. Put a block of ice in there, and man, I love those days. That was summer. Didn't know about Jim Crow. Didn't know about racism and discrimination. Our family shielded us from that stuff. But I do remember hearing about Emmett Till. Emmett Till, for those of you who don't know or don't remember, was a black kid, a 14-year-old black kid from Chicago who was lynched in Mississippi for speaking to a white woman. And that white woman just recently admitted that she lied on Emmett Till. Do you think it got any media coverage? That's why we need to do the reality check with Charles Butler, because those things need to be talked about. Those things need to be brought out to the American people. Police abuse, police accountability needs to be brought out and talked about. See, I don't care if the police shoot a black criminal. I really don't. But what I am concerned about is when a law-abiding citizen is mistreated by a law enforcement officer. I've been mistreated by law enforcement officers all my life since I was 13 years old. And I talk to all my friends who are professionals, and they say the same thing. But I had a guy on my show, a guy named Ryan Morrow, who told me that my incidents with police officers was anecdotal. Well, guess what? I told him I'd punch him in the nose if he'd said that to my face. And I'm serious. I would have probably punched him square in the nose. He's going to tell me that my experience with cops is. So I interview 1,000 of my friends. Is that still anecdotal? I think that's a pretty good survey. It's as good as the surveys done by Gallup or any of these other Rasmussen or anyone else. And by the way, when we talk about Rasmussen, today Rasmussen just said that Trump's approval rating was up over 50%. Now, other people are saying, other news agencies are saying it's 37%, lying, fake news. And you know, we have to deal with this media bias. And here I can promise you, we will not have a bias. We will not have a Republican bias or Democratic bias. We're going to look at the issues and we're going to look at them head on. Just like the bombing in Syria last week and the gassing of the Syrian civilians. I have a problem with those pictures coming out of Syria. You have fathers who are running around with babies and children who were supposedly dying from sarin gas, and they're in civilian clothes, short sleeve shirts, and they're washing the babies off. And I'm going, why didn't they die too? And then you had these people, these guys, these men saying, I watched my babies and my wife die in my arms. And I'm going, but why didn't you die if the sarin gas was there? Were you wearing a mask? No. Were you wearing a protective suit? No. So people, let's not be fooled by what we see. Let's not be fooled by the media at large. People have an agenda. We're not going to have an agenda here. We're just going to talk about the issues the way they should be talked about. We're going to bring you the news that you should have. We're going to bring you incidents and talk about policy, talk about effect, talk about bringing solutions to issues that should have been dealt with a long time ago. If you ask me how I feel about immigration, I'm going to tell you, and I've said this for the last 30 years, I believe that all immigration, legal and illegal immigration, impacts black Americans more than any other group of people. Whether it was the migration of the Irish in the 1820s or the waves of Jewish people and Italians coming over in the 1890s, these groups of people have always negatively impacted blacks and pushed them further down the socioeconomic ladder. And the question is why? Well, if you're really serious about learning about it, you can read a book by Llewellyn Lewis, who wrote several books on, one is called The Harlem Renaissance, great book, but he won the Pulitzer for writing 3 books about W.E.B. Du Bois. And in this book, Harlem Renaissance, he was very clear that before the Davis-Bacon Act, when the migrants came over, they were treated as migrants. They weren't treated as Americans. They were treated as Italians and Poles, and they called them by all the ethnic slurs, you know. But blacks, white men made the most money. Blacks were paid the second highest wage in the 20s. Then we get the Democrats and the Davis-Bacon Act. They keep the niggers from moving from down south, so they were losing control over these niggers. Folks, black folks have been so misled in this country, it's not even funny. But this is not going to be a show that focuses primarily on blacks or whites, but we're going to do a black inflection because I'm black and I see America through 2 prisms. One is my professional prism. The other is my black American prism. Because as J.C. Watts said to me one day, you know, CB, every day you get up, you're minding your own business. You're not thinking about the fact that you're black. But somebody lets you know that you're still a black man in America. Now, this is a great, great man, J.C. Watts. He's a pastor. He was a quarterback at Oklahoma University, quarterback with the Heisman Trophy winner Billy Sims. Had to go to Canada to play pro ball because we didn't have black quarterbacks in those days because blacks couldn't play quarterback, even though they played at the HBCUs for years and came into the pros, and they became wide receivers when they came into the pros instead of the great quarterbacks that they were in college. A perfect example of that, if you really want to check it out, is Jefferson Street Joe. Jefferson Street Joe, a guy named Joe Gillum. He set Terry Bradshaw on the bench. And Terry Bradshaw is a Hall of Famer. You don't know about Jefferson Street Joe because drugs took him out. And that's the other thing, drugs. How can people take something that they know is going to hurt them or hurt their families? Nobody is forcing people to sit and put a needle in their arm or to take opioids. And we're going to talk about this opioid addiction, this opioid epidemic. Nobody said anything about opioids when they were in the black community, i.e. heroin, a derivative of opium. Nobody talks about that. Nobody tried to stop it. In fact, J. Edgar Hoover was one of the people who looked the other way and encouraged it. Because J. Edgar Hoover saw the UNITA movement. The UNITA movement was part of Marcus Garvey. He saw blacks coming together and blacks doing something that hadn't been done before. They were being independent, self-reliant. And J. Edgar Hoover dedicated his career to destroying black economic and social equality, even though he was a closet homosexual. So all you folks out there talking about the LGBT group and how we're all together and we're all, I'm tired of that. I'm tired of all that. I say, let us stand up and do what we need to do. And whatever that is that you decide, not a collective group, not a collectively, America is built on the premise of the individual. The Constitution doesn't say anything about this group of people have the, they say we, the people. You have the right to pursue life, liberty, and happiness, whatever you define that to be. Not some body, some community activist, or some civic. Who elected these people? I remember, and we were talking about this the other day, I remember in 1986 when I saw Jesse Jackson on television, and he said, we're going to be called African American. I'm going, who decided that? Why would we be called African American? And today I hear a number, and that's why I'm writing this book, because I hear a number of people saying, Charles, I don't like that term, African American. And I don't either. I'm a black American, and I'm proud of our lineage. I'm proud of our heritage here in America. And, you know, I treasure this flag. This is the only flag that I have. I don't recognize any other flag. And that was seriously brought into question from time to time. You know, we had the Black Liberation flag. You know, I ain't into that stuff. We don't even know what that means anymore. And who cares? But I do care about the red, white, and blue. And we should raise our children to, too. This is a great country. We have great people. And by the way, folks, we couldn't have become the country we are if we were all bad, if we were all racist, if we were all socialist or sexist or misogynist people. Hillary Clinton tickled me when she said that she lost the race because of three things: Comey releasing the statement about her emails, WikiLeaks and the damage that WikiLeaks did to her, and misogyny. Well, the bottom line is, Hillary, you're no Maggie Thatcher. You're not even a Theresa May. And you're certainly no Golda Meir. So that's the reason that you weren't elected. Not the fact that you were a woman. You're not a woman of those women's stature. Or even Shirley Chisholm. I think there are two American women politicians that I would have seen, that I would like to have seen become president. One was Shirley Chisholm, who was the first American woman to run for president of the United States of America. She's always forgotten, conveniently, by the white liberal women feminists. Why is that? The second woman I think could have been president and done a great job was Barbara Jordan. But other than that, I don't see any women on the American political scene who could be president, and that includes Sarah Palin. Really. When John McCain elected Sarah Palin as his VP, we knew it was over. But look, folks, I want you to tune into a show. I want you to tune into my radio show, tune into a TV show. We're going to be kicking it up. GCNlive.com or redstatetalkradio.com, or I think it's rstn.com. We're out there doing it each and every day, have some great guests, and we'll be back again soon. Thank you for tuning in. It's Charles Butler, The Reality Check with Charles Butler.